all very much for inviting me to Hong Kong and to this conference. I think the subject is, of course, I would say, on everybody's mind who is thinking about urban development in our days. I think it's very crucial to think about walkability, about people's possibility to walk around urban areas as part of developing attractive environments when it comes to our urban lives in our growing cities. I was thinking about what Eric mentioned before here about walking up to Victoria Peak and then running down and not feeling his legs today. And I think what he said there is a very crucial thought that I will bring out during my short speech here, and that is that sometimes it's very good to walk or to run in a city or in an urban area, but sometimes you should use the public transportation system. And if you had used the Peak tram, you will probably feel your legs today. Having that said, I would say that as I mentioned, walkability, I think it is good and it is necessary to bring more of possibilities for walking and walkability to our cities in order to bring more of life and quality of life to our cities. But I would also say that in the meantime, I think it's very important that we see walking and walkability as one part of building an attractive city when it comes to movement, because walking might be good. It's important, as I said, for developing our cities and turning them more sustainable and more positive when it comes to giving people the opportunity to meet and to interact with each other. But in the same time, I think it's important to state also that if we only focus on walking and the walkability, there will be a situation in our cities, I think, where we have good possibilities for walking and walkability, but it will still just mean that people will move around in separated parts of the city or separated blocks, and they will not perhaps meet in the way that starts these kind of interaction processes and these kind of integration processes that will be able to start and to work with in order to actually bring more of a greater development and a greater growth to our cities when it comes to combining walkability reforms, a better use of our streets, a better use of our roads, with reforms also combining walkability reforms with reforms that improve our public transportation systems. That is, I would say, partly what we have been doing and working with in Stockholm for a few years, but we are still not there. I will show you a few examples of where we are now, where we have been and where we are heading in order to try to combine these different parts of reform work in order to create a more living, a more sustainable, more attractive city environment which combines walkability with a public transportation system. If I might try to, yes. Just to start with, just to give you a brief example of Stockholm and the public transportation system we have. So we have I would say, a public transportation system in Stockholm that we are pretty proud of. It's one of the, I would say, most well outbuilt or upbuilt public transportation systems, I would say, in the world compared to the city size. We have a public transportation system that has more than 800,000 travelers each day, and they are doing 2.8 million boardings each day, which means that in morning peak hour, for example, we have a 82% market share when it comes to the journeys made in the city, made by the public transportation system. And that is not only in the city center, it's actually when we are looking upon the region as a whole. 87% of our public transportation fleet is driven by renewable fuels. I think that is one important thing not to lose when talking about creating more attractive city environments, that you could not only talk about walkability and talk about public transportation, because a bus that is not environmentally friendly will of course bring a better environment because it's public transportation. But if it's not driven environmentally friendly, it will not have all the the positive things brought to you that public transportation can. If we are looking to Stockholm Central as a central station in not only the region of Stockholm but also the country of Sweden, we can see that 8 out of every 10 train journeys in Sweden actually begin or ends or are passing through the Stockholm Central Station, which of course means that our region, or the city of Stockholm, is the real hub when it comes to all kind of movements and traffic movements within not only the city, the region, but also the country as such. We've had a rise of customer satisfaction during a number of years now. I think last year we hit 78% satisfied customers. Perhaps not high compared to Hong Kong standards, but high compared to historical standards when it comes to Stockholm, and also high if we compare to other parts of Sweden and their public transportation systems. We are at the moment, just to mention a few things that of course are our challenges. We are at the moment Europe's fastest growing capital region. We are growing 6 times as fast as Paris, and I think 2nd times as fast as Copenhagen. That is the 2nd fastest growing capital region in Europe. And that of course brings great challenges for us, because if we want to keep holding a high market share when it comes to public transportation, if we want to keep on developing in a sustainable way, that will be something to take in and to make part of our positive journey, I would say, during the upcoming years. Today there are 2.2 million people living in the region of Stockholm. We have a growth rate that hits somewhere around 40,000 new inhabitants each year, which is quite high, which means that we will now have to plan for a region that will, in not that many years' time, have 3 million inhabitants, which of course will make life very different, both for the people living in Stockholm today, but also of course for the people moving to Stockholm or being born in Stockholm today. And not least but not last, I will come back to that later on. We are of course very happy to be hosting the UITP Global Public Transport Summit in 2019. So, and if I just not to forget to mention that, I would like to invite you all to that conference. I think it would be an even more interesting way to be in Stockholm and take a look at the city as such. So we are pretty proud, I would say, about the public transportation system. It is a system that has the rail tracks at its heart, of course, with the metro in the center, but with also a lot of different kinds of rail public transportations that are combined with each other in a quite good way. But in the meanwhile, this map does not only show you that we have a quite well built or upbuilt public transportation system when it comes to the rail side. It also shows you that we are a region that are consisting of both countryside and very urban areas, which means that we have 2 challenges in the same time when we are looking upon the Stockholm region today. We both have to face the fact that we are seeing more of congestion in the center of the region that we have to deal with when it comes to building more possibilities for sustainable growth, but we also have to take into consideration as well that we are a city that has quite large rural areas that we also need to bring into our idea about making it possible for people both to walk and to use public transportation where they today are using their cars for transportation. This mentioned, if we just take a look at the different sorts of transports we have in Stockholm. We of course have, as I mentioned, the metro system as much of the center of our public transportation system. As Eric mentioned, it's run by or operated by MTR, contracted by the County of Stockholm. I would say a very good cooperation, which shows us also the strength of the model we have chosen to build the public transportation system around in Stockholm since the 1990s, where we have had public procurements for all our public transportation, which means that they are all contracted and run by private operators, but of course with the authority given from the county. This has made not only it has not only given us the possibility to get a more efficient public transportation sector than we had before, and compared, I would say, to other, especially European capitals. It has also given us a chance to get innovation and new ideas into our system when it comes to developing it, which I would say has been very important. And especially if I might mention it because I'm in Hong Kong, I think that the cooperation we've had with MTR has been very fruitful when it comes to improving both punctuality, as Eric said, but also improving much other ideas when it comes to creating a better foundation for customer satisfaction than we've had before. And Eric mentioned the punctuality for the metro system. I think he was a bit conscious when mentioning it. You said 97 something, right? Last year. I think in July this year we actually hit a 99.2 punctuality in the metro system in Stockholm, which means that we are not at the Hong Kong standard, but we are closing in. You had 99.99% in July, I think, but so we have a few points left, but we are chasing you, and we will see if we will get there. The metro system, very important. 1 million passengers each day, as Eric mentioned. I would say very important also because it is very much the heart that is driven, not only the possibility to travel with public transportation, but also much of the heart when we want to drive more of urban development and more of building attractive apartments and shaping our city in a way which means that we are bringing people's possibility to walk very close to the public transportation system. Besides the metro system, we also have the commuter train system, which is the system we have for bringing people from the other parts of the region into the center of Stockholm. It is also contracted by MTR. You will start operating it on a contract from the 1st of January next year, and it is has somewhere around 300,000 passengers each day. I would say it's very important because it has capacity. And it has a strength, as I said, bringing a lot of people from the other parts of the region into the center parts of the region when it comes to making it possible for them to commute to work or to universities and high school and so on. We have, besides the commuter trains, also a quite ambitious but also expanding light rail system in Stockholm. And the idea about that has been to build rail tracks that move across the metro system and the commuter train system in order to make it possible for people to move crosswards in the region in a better way than they had before, and in that way create more of possibilities for people to travel with the metro system and the commuter train system, but from areas that has not the population capacity yet to have a metro or a commuter train by themselves. Besides the light rail system, we have also, this is also a part of the light rail system, we have the bus fleet, of course. Next to the metro system, the most well-up-built part of our public transportation system, about 100 passengers each day as well, compared to the metro system. And why is the bus system so important for Stockholm? Well, quite because what I mentioned before, we are a region that has also rural aspects to take into consideration. And we also have the idea, of course, to have some kind of public transportation system also moving on the surface in the center of the city. And when it comes to that, I would say the buses are a flexible and very good alternative to build these thin threads that gives the possibility for people that live in areas that has not the population capacity for rail track at all to get to rail track stations and to use it to the center of the city or where they want to go. But also, of course, when it comes to the inner city, to make it possible for people not to having to use a taxi or their own car when moving around, but instead can use the bus. And looking upon the center of the city, we now have 100% of our buses running on renewables, and overall of the region it's somewhere around now I think 80% and growing. And we have also been working with the buses because they are many times a very important part of bringing walking, linking walking to the public transportation system. We have also worked a lot with making them more adjustable when it comes to meeting the needs for elderly people or people with different function disabilities, when it comes to low threshold entrances and so on, and also using signs and a lot of other things that would make it more easy for all to use the public transportation system. So this is how we have tried to build our system, and we have, I would say, a very ambitious system when it comes to the city size. We have the idea to let the public transportation system, of course, grow faster than the population growth we have in Stockholm, and that both comes when it comes to the extension of the system, but also when it comes to the idea of actually raising quality within the system, both when it comes to the environmental aspect, when it comes to making it more environmentally friendly and sustainable in itself, but also when it comes to working with issues such as safety, security, and availability, and other things that we think is very important and crucial to work with. But this is not enough. We must also admit something else. We are not only a region that has an urban center, which is fastly growing and pulsating, and a rural area. We are also a region that has a lot of islands, more than 2,000 islands in our archipelago of the Stockholm region, which also actually means that more than half of the population in the Stockholm region are actually living on islands. And that is, of course, also something that is a bit tricky to take into consideration when you are planning both for walking and for building a good public transportation system. Because the alternative to walking when you are living on an island will be to swim, and I guess that will not be something that most people would consider attractive. So we have to work with, of course, an ambitious idea about ferries and boats as part of our public transportation systems. And for that we are now both in the city center expanding and using the inner waters when it comes to building up a ferry structure within it. But we are also having, I would say, a web of different ferries and shipping lines that combines the city or the region in different ways. Also important, I would say. And mentioning all these different kinds of sorts of traffic, I do because they are in the Stockholm region combined in a way that I think has been very interesting, and they have been so for a very long time. Already back in 1974, we actually linked together all the different traffic systems into one authority, into one ticket system, into one idea about how to be able to use it with today one single card and also one common monthly fare, because we thought that was a very good idea to make it easy to use, but also to make it understandable for people to see how different kinds of traffic actually are linked together in a way that we think is important to make them possible for you to use for people. But also I would say as an important step to encourage ourselves to use more efficiently when it comes to combine different kinds of traffic together, not competing with each other, but contributing to each other in a way that creates a greater value than one of the different sorts of traffic would have by themselves. We also have, just to mention it, because I think it's a very important part also of the public transportation system. We have a very ambitious idea when it comes to give elderly people and people with functional disabilities the possibility to use the public transportation system. And but for that we have a special system for them that they can use when they are not possible when it is not possible for them to move freely or walk freely by themselves because the strength might not be there anymore. And for that we have a cooperation with the Stockholm taxi companies that will give them the opportunity to use the taxis as a very competitive and low fare to get from their homes perhaps to a station or to a place where they have to go. And we also have a building up certain sorts of personal assistance that elderly people, for instance, can get when they are arriving at a station. That helps them through, for example, the metro system. They are meeting them at the station entrance, and they are helping them through the journey in the public transportation system, and then leaves them perhaps then to a taxi when they are leaving it on the other side. And in that way, if people have problems because they are not able to see, or they have difficulties to walk by themselves or anything, they can get that kind of special help, because we think that is important to encourage and to improve all people's possibilities to walkability and mobility in the city. We are, of course, as I mentioned, expanding our city, and we are trying to do that in a different way than we did when we built our city a few decades ago. We are now trying to learn a lot. I think we have learned a lot from, for instance, Hong Kong when it comes to use the public transportation system as much of the driving force behind the urbanization, behind housing construction and other things that are going on in the city. One example is the ongoing extension of the metro lines that we are carrying out right now, where we are building 10 new stations the upcoming 10 years. It takes a little bit longer to build out to extend the metro in Stockholm than in Hong Kong due to some regulations and other things. But we are right now building 19 kilometers of new metro and 10 new stations, and we try to do that in a way that actually, I would say, takes into use much of the ideas that you can overdeck old highways while building the new metro system, and you can use that kind of overdecking in a way that means that you are not only overdecking, you are creating value, and by that also creating a possibility to build new homes and new office spaces and so on. One example is Hagastaden in Stockholm, where we are now overdecking an old highway, an old concrete wound, I would say, that has been hitting Stockholm almost straight through the city. And on top of that, not only building, I think it's somewhere around 5,000-6,000 new homes, we are also building possibility for, I think, 20,000-25,000 new office spaces, and we are also building a new university hospital and a new city park on what was just concrete desert before. So I think that we are trying to create that kind of environment, and it is of course combined with a new metro station in a way that I think is important to improve the possibility to live in an attractive central urban area and not have to use your car, but instead be able to walk to a metro station and use the public transportation system, and then the wider public transportation system wherever you want to go. Finally, I would just like to mention a few words, because I think it's important to understand that from our point of view, it's not only about doing great billion investments when we talk about improving life in the Stockholm region. It's also about thinking in a different way when it comes to thinking more of mobility, and rethinking, I would say, also our role as public transportation authority. And by that we think it's very crucial to try to combine what has before been different parts of society contributing to the possibility to mobility. And by that we seek now more the role of becoming the platform that combines different sorts of possibility to get good traffic information, to bring different sorts of traffic together, no matter if it's a question of cycling or public transportation in a traditional way, or taxi or Uber or car sharing or whatever it might be, in a way that we want to, in a better way, see the whole journey and become the platform that gives people the possibility to easy get a hand on which way and in which sorts of journeys that are most suitable for them. And we are also, as a way of this, also upgrading, of course, the environments when it comes to both our stations and our bus stops and so on. Having an idea that you should have in the center of the city no longer than 350 meters to a metro station or a bus stop, for instance, and trying to increase that throughout the region step by step in the way that the region grows and in the way that the region is possible to grow. And I would say also important for us, because we are a society where we have a shift in demography. I think we can see that in many parts of our world. And so we also have to think in, I would say, the idea of being the platform for mobility in a way that means that we are in a much more active way seeking up and trying to seek solutions to especially, I would say, elderly people's possibility to move around in the city and do that not only in their own block or in their own part of the city, but in a wider range. Because, as I mentioned before, no matter if you're old or you're young, you have your full strength or you have functional disabilities. It is movement, it is the possibility to walk, to walkability, and to get around in the city that brings the strength to the city and the growth to the city that will make our cities more prosperous and more, I would say, attractive to live and to work in. And with that, I would like to end my short session with one last thing, and that is also a change we are doing right now when it comes to our ticketing system, because we think it's not only, as I mentioned, a question about billions of investments, it's also about making it easy to travel, and because of that we will change what has been a very, I would say, a jungle of different ticket fares, depending on how and where and when you are traveling, if you are a single ticket traveler, into a system which means that we will introduce an idea of one trip, one fare, that will make it more easy to use the public transportation system. And that will mean that you will buy a single ticket with a fixed price that is usable for a single journey, no matter which kind of traffic you use or how long distance you travel. And we think that would be a very interesting thing to actually make it more, to create it a less difficult system for people to use, especially for people that today perhaps not use public transportation because they think it's too difficult, they don't know how the fare system works and so on. So I think this will be a very interesting reform that we will be introducing on New Year's Eve this year, and that will, I think, bring a new idea to public transportation and to mobility that I hope we will have good experiences of, and that I hope that we perhaps can share with you when we have the UITP summit in 2019 when it comes to conclusions. So by that I will finish, and thank you very much for listening, and thank you also very much for the invitation, as I said before, and a warm welcome to Stockholm, if not before, so hopefully at the Global Public Transport Summit in 2019.